Thank you very much. This was really an enlightening talk. We're going to have room for questions now. And if you have a question to ask or a short comment to contribute, I would ask you to please raise your hand. So we can say we try to take as many as we can. So I'm also going to ask you to keep it a bit short if you can, so that more people have time to ask their questions. Go first to you in the corner, and then we'll go.
Yes, thank you very much for your speech, for your talk. I've read your book. And,
which one? I wrote 10.
They asked me 10.
Okay.
I'm working on a project to tell the story about Count Bernadotte, the United Nations mediator in 1948,
That's right.
who was assassinated by the Jewish underground. And one of the points I'm looking for research on is whether he spoke to any Palestinian representatives at that time, or whether he only negotiated or spoke to leaders of various Arab countries at that time, because I haven't been able to find anything on his talks with local Palestinians.
Right. Well, you know, he started operating as a United Nations mediator about 5 days after the State of Israel was declared. And his main interest was in securing a truce between the Arab armies that enter Palestine to try and save the Palestinians and the Israeli army. It is true that when he talked back to the United Nations, he was already aware that there is a huge refugee problem unfolding in front of his eyes. So he was one of the first to say that the problem in Palestine would not just be the borders between Israel and its neighboring Arab states. The problem would be what would be the future of the refugees. But he didn't talk to any Palestinians. He talked to Jordanians, to Egyptians, Syrian, Lebanese and Iraqi officials, and Israeli officials. But for so many of outsiders, the Palestinians were invisible and were not part of the issue at all until the Palestine Liberation Organization succeeded in bringing it back to our attention through its struggle for liberation and self-determination.
Okay. There was first a hand around the corner in the back, and later near the window.
You talked about the problems of a nationalist discourse when thinking about Palestine. But I think for the many people here who've experienced, or met Palestinians, they have a very strong sense of nationality through music and food and literature and all of these things. And how do you kind of, not say to Palestinians, but how do you kind of separate that element of culture from that element of nationalism? Because they seem very closely tied, and actually for Israelis as well, that they also have a very strong nationalism through food and the culture and the literature, which are important to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good question. I do agree that national identity, collective identity, is very important to people. The only thing I said, and I think that's the kind of conversation I would have with both Israelis and Palestinians, is that as far as a solution for the problem is concerned, these very legitimate and natural and human wishes to be identified collectively can be a hurdle for peace and reconciliation. You know, the late Edward Said had a very good way of defining it. He said that God or Providence or whatever you want to call it has brought Palestinians and Jews to the same piece of land in the 20th century. And both are not very happy about it, but they have no other way but to accept it. And that means that if you think that the ultimate goal of a national identity is to have a nation state, it will not work in Israel and Palestine. If you think that the ultimate goal of a national idea is to respect your national tradition, culture, and values, then of course there are many possibilities of having a political outfit that would both respect the individual civil rights on the one hand and the national rights of both communities on the other. For instance, the model of a binational state, which I myself I'm not a great supporter of, but I would buy it any day instead of what we're having today.
First there was a question here.
The previous question has actually kind of half covered what I was going to ask. Now, I hear you talk about, of course, you like the idea of a binational state. I'm actually very much in sympathy with your view that I think in many ways the idea of a nation state in many parts of the world is effectively over, especially with the neoliberalism and various other changes that are going on. Apart from the binational model, are there any other types of models that you can think of that might be useful? And I don't know, with your background, you'd be able to throw something in it. But I was thinking about the model of city-states as well. And just a tiny side question: have you noticed a change in Chomsky's language on Israel-Palestine and that recently? Have you seen any changes in nuances or what have you? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh yeah. Let me. Your first point. You know, I think that we shouldn't be slaves to past models. One of the most interesting thing when you read analysis in the British press about the Arab Revolution is that the only scenarios that are possible that could develop out of the revolution are things that happened before, right? Theocracy like Iran, military dictatorship like you already had, and liberal Western democracy. That's the only three options that the Arabs have when they do revolution. This is ridiculous. This is really ridiculous. Maybe they are going to create a new option that many years from now we will use a generic Arab word to describe it. Maybe it will be called, I don't know, Sha'ubiyya, or I don't know what, Wataniya, God knows. And then you will find people in Mexico saying, we want this new model that the Egyptians and the Tunisians, after years of struggling after the revolution, have built. In a similar way, we all are similar, but we're all unique. I don't know exactly what model would be adopted, and I don't think the idea is, although as academics we do that, is to look only for, you know, the Belgian model, the Swiss model, or even more ancient models. I'm not against it, but I think that reality will develop in a way that hopefully will defeat all these very clear definitions in political science books. About Chomsky, as you know, I wrote a book with him on this. In the book, he hasn't changed much his views about it, but I have a feeling that, like so many others who observe the reality, he is not blind to the fact that, if not from an ethical, moral point of view, that from a practical point of view, to continue to talk about the two-state solution is not going. It's not going to happen. I think the last person on the earth who will talk about it, even after we will have the one state, will be Norman Finkelstein. But I think Chomsky would concede before that the one state is working. But Norman will tell us it's actually not working, and there is a two-state solution around it. Yeah.